I'm here with Devin Townsend, the man, the Moth, the legend, to to talk about the new record. The Moth comes out May 29th on Century Media. How's things going with you?
Uh, in which way?
In any way you want. I mean, we can start by talking about your last tour. I saw
Okay.
you in Toronto. You weren't feeling very well. You were a little bit under the weather. So have you recovered since?
You know what? I think I'm always under the weather now and always recovering, but I think that's an indicator of prolonged periods of sustained activity. And much of what I've been trying to do over the past couple of years is find some respite from that constant sort of workload and need to have my identity sort of validated by the job. So as a result of that, yes, I'm better. And now, how am I doing? I think I'm doing all right. I'm on the tail end of a period of again sustained activity with the Moth, and the fallout from those periods once you've released a record is usually about 3 or 4 months of just feeling like existential uh, confusion, and then you're kind of back at it. So you know, that's the reason why I asked to define like the question because yeah, the answers are not uh, really simple.
As clear as they seem. So let me piggyback to my opening statement about the man, the moth, the legend, and,
Mm.
and let me ask you this: when it comes to the moth, uh, do you see yourself as a moth, or do you look at your career path as that being your moth?
Well, I don't think of myself as a moth. I think of the process of creative exploration or problem solving, conflict resolution, or interpersonal change. I see all of those things as having a moth as a metaphor to some degree. And by that, I mean that all those things that I've described require a certain type of um, destruction of the old to make way for the new. And much of what I found engaging about the idea of a moth as a metaphor is that it's so drawn towards the light that it destroys itself, right? Like it destroys itself in the process of trying to achieve what it wants. And I think that when we first started, that was viewed in my mind as being sort of like a negative thing in a sense. It's like, well, the moth destroys itself in the face of this, aspiration, which is also why I don't think of myself as such, but I think of my process as such. Getting through the things that have occurred over the last couple of years, for me, namely, like the kids moving out of home and like losing friends and like parents getting older and dogs older and all these things you can't hold on to any of these scenarios. You can't. They just things change. And so acceptance of that change requires the awareness that it's going to go away, right? And so I view the creative process, I view the last few years, I view the like what we went through as a society with the pandemic and all these things as in a sense being able to be summarized by that metaphor, right?
One thing I found interesting about this album, The Moth, is that I have felt like you had done everything that could have been done, and then yet turns out you hadn't, and now there's a new record with a complete new, different set of ideas and sounds and textures and experiences.
Mm.
Uh, was this album a lot more difficult to put together than you originally anticipated?
Not that I originally anticipated. I knew from the first moment that it was going to be a pain in the ass. So there was that. Um, but I think all these ideas that come, it's the ideas that are important. And those ideas tend to sort of define themselves in a broad way in the very beginning. Like as soon as you get an idea for anything, like something as simple as, oh, I think I'm going to have pasta for dinner tonight or whatever, then there's a set of parameters that go along with that idea. You're like, okay, so I'll put it with arrabbiata or with penne or whatever it is, right? Like, It's the same thing with creative ideas. As soon as an idea comes in, like, oh, Ziltoid, he's an alien, he drinks coffee, he's a metaphor for this, or empath, it's meant to summarize, whatever it is, there's like a broad set of parameters that come with that initial idea. And the initial idea for the Moth came with the sense of like, oh, this is going to be a doozy. This is going to require a ton of work, a ton of manpower, a ton of capital, and that was from the beginning. I will say that the reason why, my hope is that when we are doing projects, each one is something a little new in some sense, at least from the vantage point of my own output. I think a lot of that is less like I'm looking for something new and more just as I get older, the only thing that sustains my interests are ideas that seem novel to me now. Like when you're younger, you can rationalize the work that goes into a record with like a concept like love. It can be as simple as that. When you're 23, it's like those big things are a lot easier to like summarize, like hate or death or whatever. But as I get into my 50s, man, like my interests and the things that like fire me up just become more and more like idiosyncratic. That what it takes for me to really get on board with something is it's got to be a novel for me, or else I just like, man, it's too much work. Like, why would I go through all the effort to say something that I've already said, right? So I don't know. I think there's variations of themes that reveal themselves repeatedly over time, but I appreciate the compliment because I certainly try to find something that I haven't said before when I'm making something new.
Is this album only possible because of the North Netherlands Orchestra and Choir? If you didn't have them on board, would this record ever see the light of day?
Oh yeah, for sure. It would just be a different orchestra. I mean, I think, in that initial moment of creative compulsion that led me to the Moth, the parameters for it included a big orchestra, you know, or a big choir. It was not like, oh, this requires the North Netherlands National Orchestra. It could have been the one that we had worked with in Helsinki. It could have been, the one in Prague. It could have been a couple of them. But I will say that the idea kicked into gear when the North Netherlands National Orchestra offered themselves to us. So, would it have existed without them? Yes. Would it have been the same with a different orchestra? No. Would that have mattered? Also, no.
When you start putting the pieces together and recording this project, what would it end up being the most labor-intensive aspect of building this record?
The interpersonal logistics that come into being able to have it function as a single organism, right? Like much of the catalog that I've worked on over the years, it's just been me, in a room. I got a guitar, I got a bass, I got a vocal mic, I got a bunch of toys, and I just kind of make work, right? Um, but other scenarios might be me and maybe four other guys. Like maybe there's a band, or maybe me with another guy, or two other guys, or whatever. And each time you add another human being and another artist, it like exponentially becomes more logistically challenging on a social level. Just either you have to stand firm and say, listen, as much as I appreciate that idea, the vision is mine, and I'm going to have to hold to this, but there's parameters that we can work in so that you're happy and I'm happy or whatever. But then all of a sudden you have 200 people, and then you have um, headstrong people. Maybe somebody's like the leader of the orchestra, the leader of the choir, leader of the art department, leader of the recording that's happening remotely in the UK, or the recording that's happening remotely in India or China or whatever. And it's like the interpersonal skills that have to be developed to be able to achieve the vision that I'm looking for on a budget while still maintaining some degree of morale with these people. So you're not just imposing your will in such a way that you're being resented. It's one thing to have a vision. It's one thing to be like, listen, it goes like this. But you've seen it with all these kind of, Prince or any of these cats in the past. They're like, it goes like this and fuck you, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, don't look them in the eye or whatever. I mean, I think if you've got unlimited resources, then, not that that's a acceptable thing, but you can probably get away with it, right? But if you don't, and you're making weird fucking prog metal about coffee or meaning of life or whatever, man, you gotta very quickly adapt to the interpersonal logistics that go into doing this, because a lot of the times these people are doing you a favor, you know? Or it's even not that. I'm paying huge amounts of money for something that I've never had to pay money like that for before. And then all of a sudden I feel resentment, or, all these things become a huge learning curve. Because in absence of conflict resolution, in absence of being able to sort of establish some degree of morale with all these disparate groups all over, you're never going to get this shit done, ever. And I didn't realize until I was, several months into articulating this, how little the musical composition of the Moth, there was time afforded for that. It was much more about like, okay, problems, 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 problems. And so my day is spent, okay, let's get on Zoom and let's like try and solve this. Let's get on Zoom, let's try and call, you know. And then little things like, things you wouldn't expect, like throughout the world, if we're working in all these different studios, everybody's using a different DAW. Some people's using Pro Tools, some people are using Logic, Cubase, Bitwig, Ableton, whatever the platform, Reaper, whatever the platform all these people are using for. My team would have to distribute all these sessions. Like, say I wanted to get like an acoustic guitar overdub, and I didn't have the time to do it, so we had to sort of offshore that somewhere else. I had to put it together so you have a submix and a tempo and everything like this. The entirety of the Moth is one tempo map. It's not separate songs. It's like, then you send it and then you realize that maybe Pro Tools exports with like a 4 millisecond offset that Logic doesn't represent, and then all of a sudden he gets it and it's out of time, and you know what I mean? So there's all these things that I didn't have any expectation of, because in the past I'm like, I need to do an acoustic guitar. Okay, here's the microphone, arm the track, where's the acoustic, done. And one would ask, well, why couldn't you have done that on this too? It's like, because I'm busy trying to, like, the bass section in the choir is upset at the tenors for some, you know what I mean? You're like, and I was intrigued by the process, and recognized reasonably quickly that I'm better at it than I thought I would be. Like as an arbitrator, as a mediator between these groups, I'm better at it. I think I've got a certain degree of compassion and I can understand these things. And so I was shocked that I didn't just like that I wasn't able to do those things. I mean, I was, and it was great. But dude, that's what the majority of the work was. Like it was crazy. And by the time I was done, I was just thinking, wow, man, how do we do that again in the future? And the answer to that is it's all delegating. You've got to be able to say, okay, so after that first experience, who were the VIPs, the MVPs, who you're not going to work with again. I mean, what was a mistake? What was a success? Take the successes, and then my hope is that moving forward to the next one, I can then take the successes and then use that as a delegation. So I can say, okay, so you're the spearhead of this, and you're the head of this, and you're the head of this. So let me talk to you directly, and then you can work with those sort of interpersonal things, as opposed to me just fucking running like bananas the whole time trying to solve those sorts of problems. Meanwhile, people are saying, well, what's this retardando at bar 542 because it doesn't line up with the one in Bitwig or whatever. And you're just like, holy shit, man. Like, but it was
Wow.
fascinating. It was fascinating.
Sounds like you were more of a project manager than a musician.
Well, at a certain point, you have to be, because the scale of this project demanded it. And it's like, what I hoped to achieve from it, it simply required that. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about the need for that. And then because the vision for me was so stringent, I was elected. And yeah, so there's a lot of project management. So I remember thinking, like, man, we got basically a week and a half to finish the writing of this. And I was like, oh my God, right? And it's we did it in Sweden. I did it in Sweden while we were recording the drums. Like, while we were recording the drums, I was finishing the work, because I knew as soon as we got back, I had to go straight to the choir thing. And the choir and orchestra needed finished parts a year and a half before we were able to do the performance. Like, no, not a year and a half. It was less than that, about 8 months, just so they could rehearse it. And so I had to complete orchestra and choir before I completed lyrics, before I complete. But again, man, it was like the amount of times I thought, oh, this isn't going to work. And then when it did, I was just like, it's almost like when you get something validated that you thought was impossible, there's a certain amount of like disappointment because you're like, oh shit, I could do that. Oh shit. That means that there's an option of it happening again.
One of the interesting aspects of this record, when it comes to the concept and the way you put it all together, is that we're living in an era where everybody wants everything quickly. They want singles, they want short content formats, whatever you want to call it. And you're releasing an album that, in my opinion, if you don't sit down and listen to it from beginning to end, it makes absolutely no sense. It's impossible to take one track out of the context of this album and have an idea of what the album is all about. I just don't think you can do it. Uh, does that worry you at all that perhaps some people will not see the vision that you had for it?
Nah, I don't care, dude. People don't see the vision for what I do anyway. No one gives a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, it's super liberating in a way, because it's like if I had just gone through my career with just like easily understood successes every step of the way, then that would be another conversation. I'd have to like rationalize it. But I'm fortunate that most people think I'm a fucking banana, so it's like it's okay. And so when people are like, I don't understand the record, I'm like, dude, get in line, man. Like, you know?
Listen, I'll be the first one to admit it took me 15 records to understand what you were doing. So
Yeah, but
I
but
got in
you
late
also
into the
got to
game.
understand, as much as I appreciate that, I wasn't trying to solicit for you. You know what I mean?
True, true.
Like I'm not saying, oh my God, please listen to what I'm doing. I'm like, and the same thing I say to anybody else in the audience. If they're like, dude, I don't like what Devin does, I'm like, why would in a million years that bother me? Like, it doesn't. The only way that it bothers me at all is if I can't continue to do my work because I love doing what I do. So when people are like, oh, record didn't sell, or, we got to get chart positions or whatever, my only impetus to do that whatsoever is not to like rationalize the work to people that I don't know, but more just I want to continue. So if I have to go out there and, dog and pony show it for a while so I can continue doing my work, I mean, I absolutely will. But people come up to me with the Moth. I did an interview with a guy the other day, and he goes, how could you possibly expect people to sit and listen to this? Like, do you think that people will have patience for this? And I'm like, well, clearly you don't. But I mean, it's okay for you to say that. Like, I mean, we're both not dumb. It's like you don't have to like cloak the criticism in anything. You can just be like, I don't get it, and I mean, dude, it's fine. And I think the thing that's most intriguing to me in that regard is the level of uh, the level of concern that I think as artists we're sort of asked to have about whether or not people understand the work is such that I think can compromise your creative process. And so with Moth, I really um, I really leaned into not compromising, you know? And it's like, and that's why I just put my big old face on the cover too. I'm like, yeah, this guy, right? And so when people are like, "Oh, you're crazy," I'm like, "In your estimation, that's fine." However, if you want to ask me about the concepts, if you want to ask me about my process, if you want to ask me about it, I have the answers to why I do the things. This is not based on sociopathy. This is not based on being provocative. This is based on a sensitive artistic mind in an environment in 2026 where creative freedom seems to be quelled on all fronts, because AI, because the industry, because of record sales, because of what it takes to continue as an artist. We're encouraged to be conservative with our creative outputs. Also, because nobody wants to be viewed as being uh, unable to be understood. no one wants to be viewed as being so abstract that something that means something to them on an artistic level is interpreted as being like an indicator of psychopathy or something. I mean, it's like nobody wants that. But at the same time, with the Moth, I was like, I'm going to do it the way that I feel it needs to be done. I'm going to say what I need to say. I'm going to use these metaphors, whether or not it's about sex, whether or not it's about any of these concepts. I'm going to use it in a way that seems to be artistically congruent with where I'm at as a human being. And if people don't understand it, like I'm just going to put my face on the cover. You know what I mean? And I'll just be like, yeah, dude, it's cool that you don't understand it. And it's also cool if you don't want to understand it. And it was more important for me to say than anything else. I'm like, please don't try to understand it if you don't want to. Like, the only thing I would ask from people is just like, you can, you can dislike it with your whole self, but I assure you that it's coming from a place of authenticity. It is not coming from a place of trying to uh, entice an audience.
Or appease the masses for that matter.
Yeah, but I mean, God, I couldn't imagine that being your motivator.
I think for some people it is.
Yeah,
That
no, I think for a lot
that
of people.
desire to be recognized or to be adored to a certain extent, I think it
Dude, I'm
drives a lot
looking
of
for the
people.
opposite. Maybe not, I don't want people to hate me, but I don't want to be recognized. It's like, but at the same time, that's why I put my face on the cover. Like, dude, what the fuck am I talking about? But
Yeah, there's a little bit of a yin
yeah,
and
yeah,
a yang
yeah.
with that. Uh,
Well, but I guess it's also the fact that I don't view what I do as being particularly popular. You know what I mean? It's like I inhabit like a little corner of this prog metal universe, and I've got an audience which has just been so supportive for what I do, and I'm not looking to do anything other than service that audience, and that audience seems that the primary the primary parameter as to whether or not it's accepted by that demographic is whether or not it's coming from the heart, right? And I assure you it is. Whether or not it makes sense to you, it's coming from the heart, right?
and going back to what you said in terms of being able to ask you and you have the answers for your creative process, as I was going through the record and I see the closing song, "We Don't Deserve Dogs," I was like, it seems to me that sometimes you come up with these song titles as you're sitting somewhere, maybe drinking a coffee, watching TV or something, and something pops into your mind. I'm like, wow, that would be a great song title. Is that what happens with some of these song titles, or there's a little bit more of a deeper thought process that goes into it?
How would other people think up song titles?
I was thinking about in the toilet.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I don't think first off, I don't have a process ever. And what's really interesting about doing interviews past the point of releasing a record is the questions, which are great, by the way, thank you, uh, are often asked and force an artist to reflect on something that is unconscious. It's like I think there are some artists that have so much invested in their process that they document it. It's like, well, my process is this. I've got a special song naming room that I go to, and I sit down and I put on my song naming sandals, and and then I talk to the gods, and then write it down on my note. Dude, like I don't know. Like one day I was just like, we don't deserve dogs, and I was like, oh, that's a good name for an ending, But it's like I don't think about why I name things. I don't think about how I name things. I don't think about the only criteria that I adhere to the process of my creative world is whether or not I can stand behind an idea. Whether or not something that I'm saying has got enough accountability in reference to my own personal experience that I'm not representing something that I don't not even that I don't understand, but that I don't that I can't rationalize. When I was younger, I used to work with things that were really heavy, um, but it was all my rationale for that at the time was just catharsis. It's catharsis. But I didn't recognize at the time that every time you rationalize something as catharsis, and it's also um, coming from a place that maybe is unrecognized within your own artistic mind, it's like kind of a loose cannon, right? And in the past, for me, all of a sudden people come up and say, "Hey, did you mean this? Hey, did you mean this? Did you say this?" And I'm like, "No, dude, that's not what I meant at all." I'm like, "Well, what did you mean?" And then I'm like, "Oh, actually, I don't know." And then I started thinking about it, and although on some utopian artistic level, you'd like to be able to just be like, leave it at that, say, I don't know, I just fucking doing whatever I want. But the practical reality of it is by making things that are really toxic, all of a sudden I started finding that my life would resonate with that toxicity. So the criteria now is simply I let it flow, but the work that I do on a personal level in my own life is that of trying to find equilibrium or balance so that I can feel free to let it flow and not feel like I'm going to be representing things that I don't understand, right? And it's not like I don't have to understand it intellectually, but I have to understand it emotionally. I have to understand it emotionally, and that's the criteria, right?
I think sometimes for us as the listener, we try to overanalyze the artist's process, and sometimes we think that we know as much as the artist themselves. So we get into the weeds of why this thing was created there, because we always look, it's like the meaning of life. We always think there's something much bigger out there than that we don't know about. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but
So I
when
think there's a little bit of
yes,
that comes into it.
I do know that, but I mean at the same time, I had to stop a certain collaborative effort while we were putting the Moth story together, where there were certain members that wanted to have a moral at the end of it. They wanted to say, "Oh, that's what this is about." You know what I mean? And this is the meaning of life. And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, you telling me you know? Like, the arrogance, man." So I would say that the best way to describe the Moth is it's a story about the meaning of life by people who have no fucking idea, you know? But I think observation, rumination, um, these things are important artistic motivators. But where it really falls apart for me is when people claim to know, when people claim to understand the ineffable nature of the universe. It's the arrogance of that I find just so shocking. So nothing that I write is coming from that perspective ever. Maybe when I was younger, I was naive, you know, you first take drugs or something. But as a 55-year-old man, dude, like everything that I write is coming from the place of I know less now than I did this morning, right?
And that desire to move forward with it. I feel like the record kind of exemplifies that for me, because I think by the end of the record you can only achieve the knowledge once you go through the process, and I don't think you
Right.
can understand that until you actually go through it. When it
Yeah.
comes to life, I just think by the time we realize it, we're not around anymore to tell others what it meant.
Well,
uh
so then maybe the effort that we go into realizing it needs to be rethought,
mhm.
you know? And I think that a big part of the process with the Moth was that for me because I think a certain amount of my fear in the past was rooted in I need to understand things in order to participate in them. But again, the arrogance of that was such that when I started recognizing how impossible it is to understand anything, really, like fundamentally, like how is an apple made? It's like, you know, on one level, oh, it grows on an apple tree, but it's like, okay, well, how's a tree and what's the dirt and how's the photosynthesis and what's the reproductive, you know, and how does the bees and blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's just these endless wormholes that you can go in. And I think a lot of that in the past for me, I was entertained by my ability to pontificate on these things, you know. But as I get older, I'm like it's futile to try and quantify it. But I think if your intention is coming from the place of wanting to help rather than hinder, then it comes down to how you structure your own life in the times that you're not being creative, and then um, how you can foster a sense of intuition and surrender to the process. And by doing that, it's like sort of the best of both worlds. In one way, you're able to say, okay, I'm able to surrender because my intention from the beginning was not to try and make things worse for people. And then secondary to that, you can say, and I don't understand. I don't understand, right? Like, how foolish would it be for me to claim that I do? I don't know, man.
Wow. This got deep. I love it. Devin, thank you very much for your time. We were out of time. Always a pleasure to talk to you about your music, about your ideas, coffee, whatever it is that you have. It's always so much fun to chat with you. So thank you very much for your time today.
You too, brother. Thank you.
Take care, man. Bye.
Bye bye.